All right, Internet Money Lads, we are going to go over a quick episode today because I need to go to bed and I realized I hadn't recorded an episode. So I hopped out of bed. I'm like, all right, I got to give you guys something. So giving you 3 tips to double your podcast downloads. And I know not everyone has a podcast, but I think a lot of these will apply to if you have a blog or something of that nature. So the first tip is to keyword stuff the podcast name. So initially I had the podcast, I think it was Internet Money Info Products Podcast. Actually, not bad in terms of ranking for keywords. But then what I did was I switched it to Internet Money : market secrets for like SMA, agency, coaches, consultants, growth operators. And I added a bunch of keywords in there. And I saw that on Spotify, this is only a theory, but it pretty much like 4x'd my amount of Spotify impressions. Actually, I can show you real quick if people are watching on the video. If not, I will quickly just talk through what we're seeing. So when I first started the podcast, same name. Now impressions, and when I'm talking about impressions, I'm talking about mostly from a search perspective. So if we open up my screen real quick, not always the best for audio, but I will talk through it as best as I can. We can go to the analytics, and then we can look at my impressions. So here you can see how much my impressions have really skyrocketed, especially from search in the past, since I made the name change. I wish I could see the exact date that I made the name change, but you can see I start out around like 4 or 5 impressions per day, and then I'm up to about 150 plus on the average, or not 150 plus, sorry, like 120 around there average. And that's what I'm reaching at these days. And you can say, well, it's the combination of having more content, but then also having more keywords. Because if someone searches for SMA, agency, consultancy, coaches, they're going to find my podcast because it's stuffed to the brim with keywords. And I think in regular SEO, a lot of people will fault you for this, but in podcast land, because discoverability is really hard, I think this is a very good way to go about increasing your views. All right. So that's for the SEO. So don't name your podcast Sauce Talk, although Sauce Talk is kind of cool. Better to name it Marketing Secrets for SMA and Growth Operators. Whoever your core ICP is, just like put their name in there. If you want to make a biotech podcast, just name it the Biotech Podcast, or put in some other stuff, but put the keyword in the title. Then spend a lot more time on titles. So one of my best episodes that I ever did was, it was 0 to 100K in 2 years, and with this guy, whatever his name was, but man, that ripped. And it made me think a lot like, hey, if I spend more time on the title, it means more people will click it, because they might discover your podcast, right? But, and it's the same with YouTube, it's the same with your blog article. They're scrolling through this endless feed of content, and you need to have a title that stops the scroll. So recently I've been trying to do, I wouldn't say it's more clickbait titles, but titles that really get people to want to click. And then also I've tried to cut out some of the initial stuff. So when I posted Sean Nabil's episode, highly recommend those 2 episodes. I didn't do like the welcome to the Internet Money Podcast. I did. What I did was I actually cut that part out, and I just had it launch on the first question, where it's, hey, if you had 1 minute to describe how to launch a successful online business, what would you say? So boom, like immediately trying to lead with value, and not like, hey, what was your life journey? Hey, what was this? So not only the titles, but then leading with value. So the one thing is the titles will get them to click because there's really nothing else they can go on. And then the first minute will get them to stay. So I really want to hook the audience. So that's another thing. So we could even call that the 3rd tip. Now, the 4th tip, the bonus tip, is to create a Dream 100. I think most people inherently understand this, is that who you have on the podcast is really important. For example, this guy, Threads guy, brought on a certain bald head entrepreneur who's very famous. He's the owner of The Real World, and that guy pulled in 1 million plus views. So you have Tate on the podcast. There you go. I just said his name. You have Tate on the podcast, and it's going to pull a ton more views. So everything on this guy's YouTube had less than, I think, 1,000 views on each episode. And he was interviewing interesting guys in the crypto space. He brings on Cobra, and boom, he pulls 1 million. So you really want to spend time trying to reach out to the top people in your field. So new listeners will come from these really big audience providers. And that kind of leads me to the conclusion that one large whale is better than 30 mid gas. However, I hope people don't misconstrue when I say this, is that you need the other guests in order to improve your ability to handle the whale. Like if you just have, I don't know, David Bowie as your first guest, like that's really cool. But like most people are not ready to interview that guy. Like they're pretty bad interviewers. Like you might butt in too early, or you might just like be breathing weird. Like there's so many things throughout my episodes that I notice that I'm doing incorrectly. So that's the 4 tips. And real quick, I'll wrap it up. So keyword stuff your podcast name, spend more time on your titles. Also, try to value pack the first minute. So that's the third tip. And then 4 is to create a dream 100. So create a dream 100 of like 100 whales that you would love to get on the podcast, and then work like heck to try to get them on there. So hope you liked that quick episode. Now I can go to bed, and I'll talk to you all soon. Internet Money Podcast out.